Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome to this episode of Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians. And today I'm actually doing a very special edition that I haven't done in so long. I don't even remember when I did last time. And the reason why I wanted to do this, I wanted to team up with other amazing humanitarians to talk about something specific, which is investing or investment. And how can we do that in a way that feels safe and good to do that, even if we're doing our current humanitarian work, or even if we're thinking about transitioning, or maybe even not transitioning at all, but we're just curious about how others are doing and how this can be done. And that's why we wanted to share today our experiences of how we're doing it, what are the thinking process behind, the decision process behind. And that's why I invited amazing Priya to come join this conversation. So, Priya, welcome. And would you like to tell a bit about yourself before we start?
Yeah, sure. I've been working in the humanitarian sector for, I'd say like 14 years now.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I have, been moving from country to country. Um, uh, my initial days, of course, I started in my home country, and then I have been moving around for most of my career. Um, so that's basically what I do.
Yeah,
Uh,
amazing. So the reason why we wanted to talk about investment with Priya was because we realized basically she has more of the investment history that she has. I don't have, and I started doing this investment work, I think, only in the last, I would say, 10 years or so. And that's why we really wanted to bring different perspectives of how we can start investing in the early ages as well as in the later career, whatever your way of currently your situation is. We wanted to share our experience of how it can work. And also, it's never late, but rather it should be as soon as possible. But we'll discuss that in detail. So maybe, Priya, the first question that people will be asking that we need to address is why should we even invest, right? Isn't it scary? Isn't it risky? Isn't it this? Isn't it that? Because we always have our reasons for not investing, basically, which was most of my career. And ironically, I never invested while I was in the humanitarian sector. I started investing afterwards. So that's why, how would you answer that? Why should they invest?
Um, I, I mean, I should say that about the fear, I completely understand because I have also been very careful and skeptical. Uh, but I did start, incidentally, very early on
Mm.
in my career, within my first year actually of work, when
Mm.
my salary was quite low, I have to say.
Mhm.
So it wasn't very high or anything, but even in that, with all my fears, etc., I still decided to do it because I was, guided by someone in the family that even if it's a small amount, better not to keep it in the bank, and it's better to do something else with it because it's something that I learned at that stage: opportunity cost,
Mm.
which is a phenomena in like economics that every time you don't do something with that and it doesn't make you any money, you are more or less just wasting it. So yes, and at that stage, at the initial stages, having limited resources, of course it feels scary. um, but I have to say that why it's important to start as soon as I would still say it's not too late, because there are many types of investments that I've only explored later in my life. So it's
Mm.
still doable, but as soon as one can start, it's good because in the long run, it helps really to achieve some sort of financial freedom, and gradually starting to create passive income sources can really give one a sense of freedom later on in life, because this is at the initial stages, the kind of energy we have, the running around we do for work, etc. At some stage we might want to do things differently, and then to be able to take a step back as well, to have that passive income source and to have financial freedom. It's quite important, I'd say.
Yes, I love that. So I would say always that the reason why we should invest or at least create the passive income, whatever the understanding you have, is because doing things out of fear costs a lot of resources, right? And I think that's really what we're realizing is that distrust costs a lot of money or a lot of nerves. And another way that I can explain it is that if we keep postponing this, or if we keep feeling like, oh, the money is the reason I can do XYZ, it will always be the reason we cannot do XYZ. And unfortunately, I have learned this a hard way in my later stages, as I said, in my career, but I'm still glad that I did that because one of the things that I've heavily invested, I think, starting from my 30th, my age of 30, is in myself, firstly to understand even like what is investment, what is money, what kind of money I want to be making, how money cannot be the reason why I'm basically like saying, oh, I can't be living with my mom that I wanted to, right? Because I really wanted to like prioritize the later stages of my mom's life because she's getting older and I wanted to be next to her. And I kept thinking, well, if I do that, I'm not going to be able to have any money to be supporting my family because
Mm,
I'm the only person who supports my family and not only my family, my extended family. So basically, if I like something happens to me, or if I can't have the regular salary that I was so used to it, then everything just falls apart. And not only that I can't be with my mom, but I'll also will be so stressed out and panicked about what am I gonna do? How am I gonna support, right? And it's just so much of this unnecessary stress that I think we could have avoided with little money coming in. And the other thing that I think a lot of the times when I coach people, especially if we're coming from the global south, where the social system is not as we had
yes.
hoped it was, right? And therefore we cannot rely on the pension, or even if, for instance, my mom receives pension, but she cannot live off that pension. And I have been supporting her ever since she's been pensioner, which is like, I don't know, 20 years now. And and when the pension is not reliable or not enough, right? And when the social security is not there, when you cannot really rely on maybe, I don't know, other people's support, then you basically have nothing else left. And if you lose job on top of it, and the job market being so unstable currently, then there it just feels so precarious to not to be trusting and not to be learning how to invest and at least have some version of safety net, right? You're gonna
That
say,
that
Priya?
point on social security and all of that that you mentioned for people, particularly from the global south, yes, that's very true. And actually, that's the
Yeah.
reason also that I was advised by my family member that start thinking about it early on in your
Yes.
career, a small pinch of it even,
Yeah.
but one must do something about that. Because I think often we think of financial security, but I would say we have to move from financial security to financial freedom, which will give us freedom of choice,
Yes.
as you were mentioning.
Exactly, right? So the whole purpose of this sharing experience with Priya is we really wanted everyone to help you understand that the more we start investing in things and learning, and even if we lose money along the way, but we're learning how we can get better at investing, the more we start realizing that we can actually be in charge of the money, whatever the even the minimum money that we put aside or invest or keep growing that will then help us um, like make the choices rather than give in to the fears or give in to the pressures of, oh, I just have to take this job because I have no choice, or I just have to not be with my mom, like in my case, because I cannot afford to be there, right? Or maybe for some of us, it's with children, the maybe we have just given birth to children and it's so difficult to just go to duty stations that we don't want to go to because it's such a long journey or we're away from our children and we don't want to be doing that because we want to be with our loved ones. But at the same time, we're so pressed of the money that now we're just giving into those pressures of life, right? So therefore, I think the whole purpose is always how can we create that freedom like financial or material freedom that get us help us to say, oh, actually, I can afford to not do anything for 1 year or several months, and I can rely on my investment. I can rely on this money coming in, and that will keep us supporting, right? Amazing. So, Priya, would you like to share your experience of how it has been and also like maybe the thinking process and maybe also like overcoming your own fears of, oh my God, I'm doing this and it's a commitment, right? And how did you do that?
So yeah, like I was saying, I started, of course, very small.
Hmm.
And at that very initial stage when I just, started making some money, of course,
Hmm.
the first instinct was, oh, I could have bought this or I could have done this. And
Yeah.
it's not that, not to say that I completely curtailed myself, but yeah, maybe, yeah, if I wanted to buy something, I waited for an extra month because I was putting this, and always
Yeah.
the temptation to sort of reach into that.
Hmm.
So yes, I was, and then I was always very afraid and skeptical, I have to say, about certain investments, because there is also risk in
Yeah.
investments. So, and I used to get a lot of advice from certain family members, friends, etc. And I have, because I'm a lawyer by profession, actually, so I have a lot of friends in the legal space,
Mm.
and like a lot of lawyers who were at a very different stage of their career, where I compared to where I was. And I used to hear a lot from them as well about investing and all of that. It made me think that it also confused me, because
Mm.
everyone invests as per their risk taking appetite,
Yeah.
their earnings, etc. So it really motivated me to start looking into it and to start understanding
Mm.
the different financial investment types, asset
Yeah.
classes, everything. So I started I allocated maybe like 1 hour, 2 hours a week to try and
Mm. Mhm.
understand of
Mhm.
what this is, what returns they could reap,
Yeah.
eventually how it would compound, the concept of compounding, etc., all of that, how to get comfortable with, with good leverage,
Yeah.
how to leverage, and also good leverage, because there can also be like one can overdo that as well. So
Mhm.
all of that, I started reading and understanding more,
Mhm.
and I had decided that for me the best thing was to stick to low risk investments,
Mm.
at least for a good part of the initial years.
Yeah.
And even now, I would say I'm not big into very high risk investments. Now have maybe graduated to some medium risk investments, but for a good part of my life, I have stuck to low risk investments and understood them very well. And another thing with investments I learned is a bit of patience,
Mm.
because sometimes when it's going well, there is the temptation that, okay, maybe I just take the money out of this and put it into that.
Yes.
And I've realized with experience, actually, that maybe that's not the best way to go for me, because mostly I've seen that it works twice, maybe thrice, and then
Mm.
at some point it gets stuck. So yeah, so that's also what I mean by risk taking, because that's also it requires a bit of patience, because one will see the results a bit later.
Hmm. Amazing. Yeah. So if we look at the people who are thinking about, okay, if I do this investment and if I start doing it now, like let's say this week, this month, or this year, 2025, right? Where would I start? I think is always the question that people like ask me at least is where would I start? Like where would one say, okay, I actually have no time, no energy, because my work takes up all my soul and heart and everything. And I have really no time to be actually sitting and studying, but I rather want to like have this money, small money, right? And I just want to say, okay, this person handle it whichever the way you know. Because I just don't know these little steps. So what would you say, Priya? Where did you like say, okay, this is where I'm gonna start and I'm gonna stick to it until I see some returns?
So I started, the first thing I did was I started with certain tax saving investments
Mm,
in my home country, because
mm-hmm,
at the time, yes, the salary, was a small salary.
mm-hmm.
Yet I realized that I just about fell into the tax bracket if I
Ah,
didn't start, investing the money.
mm-hmm,
So I realized that, okay, for that purpose, that's what actually pushed me as well, that I have
mm,
to, do that. So I started with a small tax saving investment, which is like a bond,
mm-hmm,
back in my home country. So I started with that, and that takes a very nominal amount every month.
mm-hmm,
And it it so happened that I moved on in my career to, bigger things and all of that, and I even forgot about that initial investment
ah,
that I had made. And I remember that when I had to finally, put together a down payment to buy a property, I remembered that I had that, and that had compounded, and it actually helped me eventually in my down payment.
oh,
So,
excellent.
so that's where I started.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, of course, there are also fixed deposits. I did have that too, because those are easily breakable. If one feels that, a part of your
mm-hmm,
investment could also be that, you can break that. This type of investment that I'm talking about in bonds,
yeah,
you may not be able to easily break it, but it's a very nominal amount that goes.
mm-hmm,
So you don't really feel the pinch, but it really does compound. And as I said, like
yes,
once you move on a few years in your life, you might even forget that you had that investment, but it can come quite handy later on.
yes. I love that. Yes. So I would say that the trick that I'm learning, but also the way that I started or where I started, right, is so one of the things that I did is okay, I at the time I had really no like not only no knowledge but also no trust in other people or not other institutions, whatever it is. So sometimes like the $20 a day or $10 a day type of very ridiculous sounding type of investment in something small can be over time is such a compounding effect, right? And I did that for the sake of seeing the compounding effect of it because I love when things compound. It's just the joy that I get from seeing it, right? So that would be one way. And the other is where I started. I think when it came to property, and I think this is also something that a lot of people just keep like struggling with themselves of, okay, where am I going to start? Even if it's, let's say, property, I want to invest and I want to eventually rent it out, right? The way that I started, which is, I think every one of us has this skill, is knowing the family member or the friend who knows the friend. This is how I started. It's like very low risk. I had a family member who works as an accountant in a company who is building houses in Kyrgyzstan in the capital. And I talked to her and I said, I have no risk tolerance whatsoever, meaning that if I lose my money, I'm going to be very mad, right? But I also need some type of assurance that this building gets built and I will somehow get the apartment that I'm promised. Because in my country, I don't know, maybe some countries' experiences, there are lots of new construction buildings and you never know who to trust. You never know what the document situation is and all of these things, right? So therefore, I literally used my aunt as a proxy or as a guarantor that my money will not be lost. Now, had it been lost, of course, there's no way I could have done something about it, right? But then at least I used that her as a way to trust this process and say, okay, I make this investment first. I think at the time when the house was not built, it was about maybe 20K of investment, and then you need to pay, the above. Um, Long story short, you can always, I think, find someone. You need to basically make the first move of trusting one person. And that
Yes.
person will then help you either build your trust or get you the result, and you start building your own trust as an investor and say, oh, maybe I can do this, or maybe I can invest in things, or maybe I am someone who actually knows how or can learn these things and dedicate, like Priya was saying, 1 hour per week at least, and learn these things. So you like, it's always, I think, the challenging part is making the first move and then going forward from there, right? So
Mm.
now, Priya, going back to your story of once you've now, made the investment in the bonds, which is amazing because I never even thought of bonds. So you can see how my level is. And then you made the investment in the property. How did that like I guess your ability to want to invest more, how did that grow?
Um, so when I actually saw that that investment in the bond had compounded and was
Mhm,
compounding slowly, at somewhere, halfway through that, I also thought of, starting with some other investments like
mhm,
those monthly systematic investment plans, which, mutual funds, which are available like in I think everywhere.
mm,
So I started, I graduated to that, and I thought that, okay, now that I make a little more, I can maybe put aside a little more.
mhm,
So I started doing that. And then finally, when the opportunity came and I thought that I should, buy an apartment, one of those investments, of course, helped me. And I think that was the stage when I bought the apartment where I really became confident, because I also took a loan.
mm,
And of course, along these years until I reached that stage, yes, it started with the advice of family member, as you said, having the trusted, person in the family who you're listening to. But then also, there are so many technicalities gradually when, and I'm not somebody who will, yes, I will listen, I take the advice, but then when it's something technical, I also want to understand why. And when I
mhm,
used to I slowly started asking the question why, I
mhm.
realized that, okay, I also need to understand that. And then,
Yes.
so, by the time came, when I had to buy the apartment, I had already reached the stage where I had a bit of knowledge, and I realized that it's not so scary to take the loan,
Mm,
to buy the apartment. So that's when, and then once that actually happened, and I was successfully, paying off the loan, not until I fully paid it off, but that process had begun. That's when I became really confident, and I, said, okay, I can go a couple of steps further every year, and I can see what
mm,
more I can do. So yes, it
yes.
was a process.
Yes, I love that. I love that this element of what can I do every year and how can I increase that like I guess financial term would be risk tolerance or financial knowledge, right? Or literacy, whatever it is, increasing that. I think the way that I was approaching this is that once I made that property purchase, the investment, so as I said, first I was always investing in myself because like through education, through coaching, because I was just feeling like, okay, I really need to overcome a lot of my fears around how I cannot make my own money because I think I was so raised in a society where you always need to rely on something or someone to be making money, basically, right? So, yeah, I grew up in a very traditional society where you were supposed to rely on the husband to make all the financial decisions or to make purchases and all of this. And once I realized I didn't go that route, then I realized, oh my God, I need to rely on myself, except I don't know how to do that, right? So, therefore, my initial investments were always in myself. And then once I did the property investment, then the next investment, I think that the reason why it came about is also because I started feeling like, what if I can, like, with the money that I'm making, I want to help other people grow as well. And this was the idea that came from. And at the time, this was after I transitioned from the humanitarian sector, and I really had this like feeling of, okay, I want to help people around me who are circling me in Kyrgyzstan who are getting the similar success, financial success, and making the money they want to, and how can I support them? And then what I really did in that instance, the my reasoning behind investing, I think, was how can I support their passion? And by supporting their passion, but at the same time, I didn't want to just help them, or I didn't want to just loan the money, which I think, or is it the word loaning? Yeah. I just didn't want to just give the money to them and then, hoping to return sometime later, which I think oftentimes the practice is that we experience. But I rather wanted them to challenge, like I wanted to challenge them, and by wanting to challenge them, I said to them, okay, here is the 15K that I'm investing. I want you to like grow that passion that you are working on already, and what level you can grow to. And they've like calculated things, and I have no clue what the business is and how it works. It's the clothing business. They do they make clothing and then they sell online. I have no clue about any of this, but I just wanted to rely on their passion to make the decision as to how they can grow it. And then I partnered with them, right? So I gave the money and I said, whatever the money coming in, I would like to get the 50% of this. They're doing all the work and all of this. And that was another way that I decided to, I guess, scale in my investment ability, I guess, right? So, like, the only reason why I'm sharing these type of experiences is to show that you can always start looking at what would be your reasoning for doing it. And if your reasoning always is, oh, I'm afraid and I'm afraid, it will always keep you stuck where you are, or it will always keep you be wary and vigilant and keep studying and never actually doing something about it. So that's why the only way you break that fear is by actually trusting someone, either yourself or the person next to, and then start doing something about it, and then you start growing it, right? So, Priya, if we can get people also like when they're investing, I think they're also investing, and then they are looking at, okay, how do I know what money I should get in return? Which
Mhm.
used to be my question. And I think I
Yeah.
still have that question, right?
Yes.
Like, I always talk to my husband about, like, I'm getting this return. Is this supposed to be this
Good
return, or
or not?
it's more, right? Or it's less, or yeah. So how do we answer that question?
I would say that, I mean, over the years and over, having financially educated myself, I think
Hmm.
the goal is also one of the goals is to also beat inflation
Mm,
generally. I mean, of course, this is, I mean, could be very subjective depending on, where you come from and
yeah,
which country, etc. Because in some countries it's at a moderate level, in some it's very high, and you won't be able
yeah.
to
Beat
beat
it.
inflation. Yes.
Yeah,
So, or at least you get close to,
yeah.
balancing out the inflation. And eventually, like in where inflation is in moderation, it's not extremely high.
Yeah.
If we diversify our, investments, usually one tends to reach that goal, because of course you'll
Mm,
also have another regular source of income, which
yeah,
also, is there. Plus then, this thing also,
yeah.
it does help. So I would look at it from that perspective, because sometimes when it's real quick returns in a short span of time, that would usually be a higher risk investment. And it's
Mhm.
not to say that one can't do it. Of course, it
Yeah.
depends on which stage everyone is at and what risk appetite they have developed by then. So yes, sometimes one could, but I personally would not do only high risk investments, or now at this stage, not only low risk. I would be more diversified than sticking to only one type of. But yes, when I started, of course, it was all a very low risk and small investments. But yeah, as we learn with that, confidence builds up, and we are able to, I think, to make that
Yeah.
decision for ourselves.
Yes, I love that. I think the way that I'm always thinking is that the return that I get, the minimum that I would like to get is getting back my money. This is how I always like thought about it for myself. And because inflation stuff is something I feel like beyond my brain's capacity. So, so, so my simple like thumb of rule is whatever the money I'm investing, I'm getting it back. Whether it's I'm investing in myself as an education or whether I'm investing in the property. So if I'm selling the property now, will I get that money back? And even though I may have, like waited for that property to be ready for I think 2 years, but still, will I be making my money back? And if I did, amazing. If I didn't, then this is where I think is very key is many of us are not really then learning why and how we could have avoided that, right? And I think that's also something that is so valuable as I would say maybe that's even more valuable because then what we're going to do is if we learn why and how we could have avoided that, now we're building our confidence even more to be in the future being better decision makers, better investors, instead of like swiping up like I used to do is like, oh my God, I lost this money. Okay, let's just not think about it, not even talk about it because it's so painful. So now let me just avoid and never invest. I think that's where we do ourselves so much disservice because now we're not only blaming ourselves and blaming the people or whatever it is and then never learning it, but also we're now increasing the fear even more. Now we are crippling ourselves. Now we don't even trust anyone, anything anymore, right? And that's, I think, is where we're going to cost ourselves so much more money and that's what we don't want to be doing at all. So that's why the whatever your like rule is of what is the return you are expecting, maybe you can also ask yourself as to whether this is the amount that other people would expect it as well. Because I think sometimes also we tend to expect things like, oh, I need to have it 10x. If it's not, then I'm disappointed kind of expectations, right? So, so in the beginning, before making the investment, ask yourself, okay, what the return on investment is, right? Which is ROI is now the fancy term.
Mhm.
And if the investment is this amount, whatever the amount you have in mind, also check with the others or with the market, whatever it is, and see if that's in fact what people are getting, or that's just you coming up with these ideas. What would you say, Priya?
Yes, no, I should say like for the ROI and yes, I spoke about inflation, but that was not necessarily the case when I bought my apartment.
Mm,
For example, um, it's in I bought it in India. It was several many years ago, and rents now have increased, but they were not that high then. And
mm,
in most mature markets, one expects a rental return of 5 to 6%. And I thought, oh,
mm.
it's going to be like that. It's going to change my life. No, I got only 3%. So when I invested, I expected something, but I got something else. But then I
Mm,
said, okay, it's not a loss. And as you
yeah,
said, at least you're getting that,
yeah,
money back.
yeah,
And it has actually how do you say, like when you have put it away somewhere, you're not so much tempted to touch it and take something out of it. And even a few years later you go and you see that okay, that money was there, and even if it just made 1%, it was still something than
yes,
than it just lying around in a current account, for example, where it's
exactly.
easy access, and you might do something that maybe spend excessively or do something with it that you would like a better use for that money would not have
Yeah.
been realized.
Yes, I think the other thing that we don't really think about it is like that I'm thinking now more of is if I keep my money in the bank, how much money or return I will get from the bank versus if I invested this money somewhere else, how much would I get from it, right? And I think some people like at the level they have the more financial awareness, I think they ask these questions, but I
Yeah.
never asked that question at the time. And I think
Mm.
equally, like Priya and I were discussing about this pensions, right? Like, I mean, I don't have pension, so I don't rely on that. But I always like find it interesting also how, for instance, my mom relied on her pension all her life. And then lo and behold, she got the pension and it was $50 at a time. And she couldn't even live for the $50 while having a house and everything else not paying, right? So imagine if she was even paying a rent, she wouldn't be able to afford any of that. So what are your thoughts on Priya over relying on pension?
Yeah, I think one must think about that because it depends also, I mean, of course, where you are from, where you will be living, but pensionable income is also taxable.
Mm,
And people forget that. And it's not going to be exactly like the salary that one earns.
yeah.
And as you were mentioning about your mom, I mean, I've seen that in similar cases in my family as well. With pension, this relaxed feeling that okay, over
Yeah.
reliance on pension, and then once the pension comes, you realize that there's also, depending again on where you live, but some level of inflation is there everywhere. And
Yeah.
then we have not factored that in. What is your purchasing power with that money
Mm-hmm.
going to be at that stage
Mm-hmm.
versus now, because now something can seem like uh, you know a lot, because I've seen that with my grandparents as well. When the uh, first few years of retirement, it seemed like, oh great, but then by the end of it, it didn't really look so great anymore. And what saved them actually was a bunch of investments in places.
Yes,
So
exactly, right. So I think the because I would say the like pension is also another form of investment, right? Only that it happens in some automatic ways as
mm,
part of a societal structure that we're so used to believing that pension will cover us all, like at least for those of us who happen to earn good money in societal terms, we just believe that, well, I'm making good money, my pension will be good as well, and it will be there for me whenever I need it, right? And without ever actually checking how much it will be by the time I actually go to the pension age. And if I want to keep my current lifestyle that I want to keep, which I think for many of us humanitarians is important to travel a lot, right? Or at least the decent amount. And also having vacations that where we don't really think about or count the money, or maybe a certain luxuries or um, certain gifts for our loved ones, whatever it is that we're so used to doing currently, then whether that pension will be enough. And if not, then maybe investing currently as well would be another way to support that pension, right? Yeah. Amazing. Anything that we haven't said in terms of investments and how and where to start and how to overcome that fear around investing or starting somewhere?
Um, I think I would just like to add maybe that, for many of us,
Hmm.
it's probably difficult also because there is also our mindset around money.
Yeah.
Uh, are we comfortable with money? Is another
Mm,
thing.
yeah.
I can tell you that I was not.
Yeah.
Now I am. I was not.
Amazing.
And,
Yes.
this is also very important because I hear, and this I don't mean necessarily, only humanitarians, but I generally, in my,
Yes.
when I speak to some friends, I hear, oh, okay, there is enough money. I'm not worried about it. Not to say that one has to worry, but, oh, I
Hmm.
don't care about it. Um,
Yes.
but if we don't care, then we will not also, foresee or plan or we'll realize things a bit later, and which we
Yes.
could have done more easily earlier.
Hmm.
uh, you
Yes.
know
Yeah.
so I don't think there is any shame in saying that, yes, I want to manage my finances, I want to understand them, and I want to Um, so there is also that mindset that I feel that one has to maybe develop over the years, that yes,
Mm,
it's are we comfortable with money?
yes.
Because when we are comfortable, we'll be able to do quite a bit, quite a lot with, managing and understanding and learning, and
Yeah.
and we can do the best that we can with what we have.
Yes.
But yeah, that's
That's
the.
so true, right? So I think one of the things that really comes down to when it comes to money mindset is how, like, the ultimate goal is how to not be afraid of money so that we can do whatever we want with our lives, pursue our passion, love, whatever we want to, rather than keep being forced by money to do things that we don't want to do, or to be in situations we don't want to be, or to be compromising our situations that we don't want to do, right? And that all comes down to how our money mindset is. And unfortunately, oftentimes I see this is that our mindset around money has been, as I said, like relying on others basically, or on an employer, on the pension, on the insurance, right? On some version of a social system or security. I mean, if you have it, amazing, except that many of us don't. Or at least, even if we have it, we cannot rely on it in the way that we want to rely on it, right? So therefore, how can we then take over that ownership over the money and overcome that fear around money so that we don't really keep worrying about it unnecessarily, or even like we're not really asking the right questions, or we're not asking the deepest, maybe if we feel like shameful questions, right? Because we're just feeling, oh, we're supposed to know this, or we're supposed to have figured it out, or we're supposed to like, I have a client who was telling me that she doesn't want to speak to the financial advisor because she feels she should have known things by then. Now, facing the financial advisor and saying, oh, I actually don't know that, feels weird after working with her for a long time, right? It just becomes like so many things that we don't even need to be busying ourselves with when we remove this fear around money, or our money mindset around how we actually want to deal with our finances, how we want to, like, even what kind of money we want to have in our bank account so that we have the freedom to be living the life we want to, right? And in order to have that money, whatever that is, not being ashamed of wanting more, or not being ashamed of even having it, but rather, okay, how do I want to now create it? What are the ways I want to create it? And then what investments can help me, or what other ways that can help me to do that? And I think that's really the what it comes down to is um, how to be more powerful than money, I think is like a, for lack of a better word, this is how I would describe it. And I think investment can be one of the sources to make that happen. And that's why we would love to support you in making that happen. Priya, if people want to come to you and ask questions or ask your support, how can they reach you?
Um, they can write to me, I mean, on my email,
Hmm.
or also I'm on social media as well, on LinkedIn as well. So
Hmm.
surely, I'll be happy to answer any
Hmm.
questions, of course.
Yeah, amazing. And I will tag Priya in this podcast as well, so you will see her address and also reach out to her and get her support in whatever the things that you feel like you don't know, or you just feel like you need the someone who can, support you through the thinking process, or even doing certain research together. All of this, Priya is happy to support. Um, and of course, this is free of charge, just as a way of humanitarians supporting
Sure.
humanitarians, right? So you should all know this. And if you want to work on the mindset around any of this, the mindset and investment money, whatever it is, absolutely come coach with me. So thank you so much, Priya. It was an amazing conversation. And I think the one thing that we didn't mention, which I forgot to mention in the beginning, is that we're wanting to do more of these conversations with other humanitarians. And in the beginning, Well, in the midst of January, we will do a meetup with other humanitarians where we'll be speaking about sharing experience of what's working in the investment, in the passive income, active income, whatever it is. We will be doing more. We will invite you to that as well, so you can come and share your experience or ask questions. So thank you, Priya, so much, and thank you all for being here and for listening to us and hearing our experiences. And we'd love to hear from your experience as well. Have a beautiful week.